The year is 1661, France. A man is standing in the most beautiful palace anyone has ever seen. His name is Nicolas Fouquet. And tonight, he is hosting the greatest party in the history of Europe. The finest food, the most powerful guests, a fireworks display that lights up the entire sky, a play written specifically for this one evening by the greatest writer in France. Everything is perfect. The king himself is here, seated as the guest of honor. Nicolas looks around at the smiling faces, the laughter, the wonder in people's eyes. He feels proud. He feels safe. He thinks tonight, I have secured my future. He is wrong. By the next morning, he will be in chains, and he will spend the next 20 years of his life alone in a prison cell, high in the mountains, with no visitors, no letters, no hope. Not because he was disloyal, not because he was incompetent, but because he made one mistake. One single mistake that changed everything. He made the king feel small. In this lesson, we'll explore the first law of power through history, real life, psychology, and philosophy. To understand how ego controls human behavior, why talented people become threats, and how one simple mistake can destroy even the most powerful person in the room. By the end of this lesson, you'll also learn powerful insights and practical lessons you can apply in your own life, relationships, career, and social world. There's a truth about power that nobody tells you. It's not about how talented you are. It is not about how hard you work. It's not about how loyal you are. Power, real power, depends on something far more fragile. It depends on how the people above you feel when they are around you. And the most dangerous feeling you can create in someone powerful is insecurity. The moment a powerful person feels threatened by you, feels like you are smarter, more charming, more impressive than them, something changes inside them. They don't tell you. They don't confront you. They simply begin to plan your removal. Quietly, patiently, and politely. This is the lesson of law, one of the 48 laws of power. Never outshine the master. It sounds simple, but the people who forget it pay the highest price. Let's go back to Nicolas. Nicolas Fouquet was King Louis XIV's finance minister. Smart, charming, well-connected, loved by artists, poets, and the nobility of Europe. He was, by almost every measure, the most impressive man in France outside of the king himself. When the prime minister died in 1661, everyone expected Nicolas to take the position. He was the obvious choice. But King Louis did something unexpected. He abolished the position entirely, and Nicolas felt it. The cold distance, the shift in the king's eyes, the subtle withdrawal of warmth. He panicked. He needed to win the king back. He needed to remind Louis of his value, his loyalty, his devotion. So he decided to throw a party. Not just any party. The greatest party the world had ever seen. The official reason was to celebrate the completion of his magnificent new palace, Vaux-le-Vicomte. But the real reason was to honor the king, to impress him, to fix things. He invited the most powerful people in Europe. He commissioned new music for the evening. He ordered rare food from the Orient dishes that had never been tasted in France before. He hired Molière, the greatest playwright alive, to write a brand new play just for that night. The evening was spectacular. Fireworks, fountains, music, laughter. A dinner that nobody in that room would ever forget. Nicolas walked beside the king all evening. He made sure Louis felt honored at every step. And as the night came to an end, Nicolas felt something he had not felt in a long time. Hope. The next morning he was arrested. The charge was stealing from the royal treasury. And yes, he had taken money. That was true. But here is the part that matters. He had taken that money with the king's full knowledge. Louis knew. Louis had allowed it. But Louis needed a reason. And this was convenient. Nicolas was put on trial, found guilty, and sent to the most remote prison in all of France, high in the Pyrenees Mountains. He never left. He spent the last 20 years of his life there, alone, in silence. Now here's the question that matters. Why? Why did Louis do this? The party was meant to honor him. The evening was designed around him. Nicolas gave him the best seat, the best food, the best of everything. So why did it destroy Nicolas? Because of what Louis felt, not what Nicolas intended. King Louis XIV was a deeply proud man. He called himself the Sun King. He believed the entire world should revolve around him the way planets revolve around the sun. And that evening, as guest after guest laughed with Nicolas, admired his palace, praised his taste, Louis felt something he could not tolerate. He felt like a guest in someone else's world. He felt like the second most impressive person in the room. For a man like Louis, that feeling was unbearable. He never said it out loud. Proud men never do. Instead, he found a reason. A quiet, legal, convenient reason. And he removed the man who had made him feel that way. The replacement he chose? A man named Jean-Baptiste Colbert. Colbert was famous for one thing: being boring. He threw the dullest parties in Paris. He had no charm, no flair, no magnetism. He would never, not even for a single evening, make Louis feel upstaged. And with the money Colbert saved from the treasury, Louis built the Palace of Versailles. More magnificent than Nicolas's palace. More spectacular than anything Nicolas had ever created. He even used the same architects, the same garden designers, the same decorators. Everything Nicolas built, Louis rebuilt bigger, because that is what threatened power does. It doesn't just remove the threat, it consumes it and builds itself on top of it. Nicolas's greatest achievement became the foundation of his own destruction. Psychologists have a name for what King Louis felt that evening. They call it status threat. Research published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that when people in positions of power feel outperformed by someone beneath them, their response is rarely confrontation. It is quiet, strategic exclusion. They distance themselves, they withdraw opportunities, they find indirect reasons to remove the threat. They do not fight you. They simply stop, including you. Nietzsche understood this dynamic deeply. In Beyond Good and Evil, he wrote about what he called the pathos of distance, the way powerful people maintain their dominance, not through aggression, but through the performance of being unreachable. To be above someone is not just about strength. It is about making them feel the gap. And when someone beneath you starts closing that gap, starts shining brighter, drawing more attention, earning more admiration, the powerful person has only one instinct: widen the gap again, by any means necessary. Nicolas Fouquet never read Nietzsche, but he felt the lesson. Now let me show you someone who understood this law perfectly. Galileo Galilei, Italian astronomer, mathematician, one of the greatest minds in the history of science. But in the early 1600s, Galileo had a very simple, very human problem. He needed money. Scientists in that era depended on wealthy patrons to survive. Powerful rulers who would fund their research in exchange for gifts, dedications, and loyalty. Galileo had been doing this for years. He invented a military compass and gave it to the Duke of Gonzaga. He wrote a book and dedicated it to the Medici family. In return, he received gifts, praise, more students, but never real money. He was one of the most brilliant minds in Europe, and he was barely surviving. Then, in 1610, everything changed. Galileo discovered the moons of Jupiter, and this time he did something different. He did not divide the discovery among multiple patrons. He focused on one family, the Medicis, the most powerful banking dynasty in Italy, a family so wealthy and influential that their name was known across the entire world. But instead of simply presenting them with a scientific discovery, Galileo gave them something worth far more. He gave them the sky. He announced that the moons of Jupiter had appeared in his telescope at the exact moment Cosimo II de' Medici had taken the throne. He pointed out that there were 4 moons and 4 Medici brothers. He declared that just as the moons orbit Jupiter, the king of all gods, so too did the 4 Medici sons orbit Cosimo, the founder of their great dynasty. He wrote that the heavens themselves were reflecting the glory of the Medici name. He did not present it a discovery. He wrote the Medici family into the stars. Cosimo II was overwhelmed. He immediately appointed Galileo as his official court philosopher and mathematician. Full salary, guaranteed, permanent. In one move, Galileo achieved more than he had gained in years of struggle. Now let me speak to you directly. You don't live in a royal court. You don't have a king above you. But you have a boss, a manager, a senior colleague, a mentor, someone whose approval shapes your opportunities, someone who, whether they admit it or not, needs to feel like the most important person in the room. And here is the truth that most people learn too late. Being talented is not enough. Being hardworking is not enough. Being loyal is not enough. If the person above you feels threatened by you, none of it matters. So what should you do? You have to do what Galileo did. You have to make them shine. If you are smarter than them, let them feel the discovery. Guide them to the answer quietly. Let them announce it. If you have a better idea, frame it as their idea expanded. Say, building on what you said. If you are naturally more charming, tone it down in their presence. Let them be the warmth in the room. Ask for their guidance. Let them feel experienced and wise and needed. This is not weakness. This is intelligence. The most powerful people in history were not just talented. They knew exactly when to hide their talent. They understood that real power is not about shining the brightest. It is about knowing when to dim your light so that the right person can shine. And when the time is right, when your master falls, or moves on, or passes the torch, you will already be positioned. You will already be trusted. You will already be inside the palace, not standing outside it in chains. Remember Nicolas Fouquet? He stood at the height of his life that evening, the greatest party ever held, the most powerful people in Europe, the king himself seated as his guest of honor, and by the next morning, it was gone. Not because he was a bad person, not because he was disloyal, but because he forgot just for one evening that the sun does not share its sky. Galileo never forgot. He looked up at the same sky as Nicholas. He saw the same stars, but instead of trying to become one of them, he pointed at them and said, "Those stars, they belong to you." And the master smiled, and the doors opened. That is, Law 1. Never outshine the master. Not because you are less, but because you are smart enough to know the right time to shine is when you are the one sitting on the throne,